Okay, so we are finally here. Man, we are finally going to dive back into Legion Quest. Now, here's the thing, because we already covered the first chapter of Legion Quest a while ago. It took place over in X Factor. And really, in that chapter, it was really more the idea of Legion just waking up and realize that he has the ability to be able to bring in a better world for both mutants and humans. But to be able to achieve that goal, he has to go back in time to take care of one single moment that he believes that could bring in this new world that's better for both mutants and humans. Now, here's the thing about our coverage over Legion Quest. Because like I said earlier, we already covered the first chapter of Legion Quest over in X Factor, but today's video, we're going to cover part 2 through 5 and not part 6. And here's the reason why, because when it comes to Legion Quest, as we all know, it leads into Age of Apocalypse. But at the very end of every single issue, when it came to all the different X books leading into Age of Apocalypse, they all had ended on the same type of note. And what I mean by that statement is that at the end of every single book, you had your heroes going through something very big and important. But then at the very end of every single issue, you had your heroes, you had your villains just get frozen in time. And the reason why, because the old world was going away and a brand new world was coming into the picture. Age of Apocalypse. And so that is why I kind of want to go ahead and save the final chapter of Legion Quest with the other X books we still have to cover before we dive into Age of Apocalypse. And so now we're able to get into the storyline for today's video. For me, the main chapters of Legion Quest. So of course, it takes place in Uncanny X-Men and also X-Men, the 1991 series. The rest of the X books come later. Now with all that being said, when it comes to the opening pages for Uncanny X-Men number 320, we do pick up with our X-Men right now, trying the best to get the attention of Legion. Now, we pick up with Storm, Jean Grey, Bishop, Iceman, and also Psylocke, 5 different members of the X-Men, all trying to work together to get the attention of Legion. But that right there is a complete problem, because you have Homeboy right now completely ignoring them. Now, we're kind of left to wonder, how in the world did we get to this exact moment? Like, what led into the X-Men having no choice but to kind of fight against Legion to just get his attention? So now we have to jump back a few hours ago. But when we do, we pick up with the X-Men arriving in Israel. Now, when they do arrive, they are then confronted by, well, Gabrielle Haller. Now, Gabrielle is, well, the ex-lover to Charles Xavier, but also the mother to Legion. And of course, as we all know, when it comes to Legion, he is Charles Xavier's son as well. But either way, when it comes to Gabrielle, she had called the X-Men over because she realized that she needed their help. Because for Legion, what he did was, in the middle of Israel, he put up some kind of black dome. And unfortunately, they have not been able to get inside that black dome at all. Not the military or any other kind of forces at all. And so they're kind of hoping our heroes can find a way to get inside. Now, this kind of leads into a few questions about Legion. And honestly, I kind of like this a lot. Because really, you could use this as a way to kind of refresh fans of Legion. Like, hey, here's everything you need to know about this character. Because you do have Storm say, listen, we know about Legion. We know that inside his mind, he has different personalities, but each one has their own set of powers. And so for Storm, she's wondering, which personality are we possibly going up against? And you have Gabrielle say, my son. You see, while he was in that coma, his mind had completely healed. And so with his mind now being completely healed, he is now thinking sane. And on top of that, he's now trying to unlock new powers that were inside of him. And so that right there is pretty scary, because now it seems like he already has access to the other powers of the other personalities in his mind. But now he's also gaining new abilities as well. And so that kind of leads us back over to the present day. Now, here's the thing, because as we get back over to the present day, we still pick up with our heroes trying their best to stop Legion, to get his attention. Now, we kind of find out that Homeboy has been listening the entire time, but at the same time, he has been completely ignoring our heroes, because what he's trying to do right now is gain enough energy that would allow him to go back in time to hopefully bring in a better future. Now, for Storm, unfortunately for her, she has to go ahead and relive one of the worst moments of her life. And the reason why, because it's him saying, let me show you what I am trying to do. Right now, I am trying my best to go back in time to bring in a better future. And so let me go ahead and give you a small example. So he takes Storm back in time to the point where her parents die, but right before her parents died, to allow her the chance to hopefully save her parents. Now, of course, she does fail. But what he's saying that, listen, I now have the ability to go back in time. And so my goal is to go back in time to a special moment. But once you have Storm and also Legion being able to arrive back into the present day, it's now time for Jean Grey to have that conversation with Legion. Now, the conversation leads to him explaining what he's trying to do. And like I said earlier, to bring in a better world for both mutants and humans. But the only way he's able to do that is if Charles Xavier is able to bring his dream to life, where mutants and humans can live together in harmony. And so you have Jean Grey realize that for Legion, he'll go back in time to a moment in time that would allow Charles Xavier to be able to achieve his goals, to bring his dreams to life. And so you have our heroes realize they got to stop Legion. And so this kind of leads into the ending of the first chapter, because you do have Psylocke being able to connect her mind to his mind. Except when it comes to Psylocke, she also connected Storm, Bishop, and Iceman minds as well to Legion. So when he does travel back in time, they also follow him as well back in time. Now, Jean Grey, unfortunately, she stays behind. But honestly, there is a good reason why, because we got to use Jean Grey to warn the rest of the X-Men what happened here in Israel, while the other four are now going back in time with Legion. But now we have to jump over to Lilandra, and when we do, we have to remember that she's still in charge of the Shi'ar Empire, but it's also her now being confronted by Jaff. And I really hope I pronounced that name correctly. Now, for Jaff, he's the actual guardian of the M'Kraan crystal, but that right there is not really important, because the reason why he's here right now is to warn her what he saw happening across the universe, that basically different parts of the universe is now beginning to disappear, being hit with some kind of wave. And so people, creatures, so on and so on, they are now beginning to disappear. Like they're out of existence completely. And so it kind of shows that thanks to Legion, what he's doing right now is completely bad for the entire universe. And so that leads us into X-Men issue number 40. Now, when it comes to issue number 40, we pick up in the past, and we pick up with, well, Charles Xavier and Magneto. At this point in time in Marvel's timeline, these two characters were working at a clinic. Now, for Charles Xavier, it was this clinic where he had met Gabrielle, the mother of Legion. And so you still have Charles and Magneto still working at this clinic. But while working there, apparently they had a brand new patient, and his brand new patient is better known as John Doe. And so you have Magneto go check in on their new patient. The thing is, their new patient is actually Legion himself. He did travel back in time, but he had forgotten everything about himself. And so right now he's wondering, who in the world is he, and how in the world did he get here at this clinic? But as we go back over to the present day, we do pick up with, well, Archangel and Rogue, really the rest of the X-Men. And the reason why, because they're trying their best to find Jean Grey, because remember, she stayed behind. She was not able to travel with the rest of the X-Men with Legion to go back in time. And so you do have Archangel and also Rogue being able to find, Jean Grey. And when they bring Jean Grey back over to the new camp, you have the rest of the X-Men figure out what is going on. Like, hey, listen, it's your son Legion, and basically he went back in time, but he also took some members of the X-Men as well: Psylocke, Bishop, Iceman, and Storm. And so you have the X-Men wondering, what in the world could Legion be possibly up to? Now, the whole idea of Legion not knowing who he is also applying to the X-Men as well, who have traveled back in time, but a tad bit different. So, for example, we pick up with those X-Men right now who are just hanging out. And they realize that, one, they do have powers, and two, they all know one another somehow. But the problem is they have no idea how they know each other. And now they do know their own names, but again, they don't know how in the world they got their name. They don't know their past at all. All they know is that, one, they got powers. Two, they know one another. And three, they came here for a special reason. But the problem is right now, they have no idea what that reason is. And so you have our four heroes trying their best to just live a life in the past until they're able to figure out who they are, where they came from, and what is their actual mission. Now, like I said earlier, when it comes to the other X books out at this time for Marvel Comics, they're also wrapping up and leading into Age of Apocalypse. And so we get a small glimpse of what was happening in one of those books. And of course, it would be Wolverine, because at this point in time in Marvel Comics, for Charles Xavier, he truly believed that he could save the life of Sabretooth, turn him into a better person. And so for Sabretooth, he was kind of like a prisoner at the school of Charles Xavier until Charles was able to fix the mind of Sabretooth. The problem is right now, everyone had officially left to go deal with the whole Legion problem. And so for Sabretooth, he believes that he is home alone, but in reality, he is not. Of course, there's somebody watching over him, and that would be Wolverine. And so, unfortunately, we will not see their battle in this storyline. That'll be in a different video over in Wolverine Solo series. But this leads us over to Magneto in the past. And you have Magneto just still being that good person, working at the clinic and checking in on John Doe. And of course, that would be Legion once again. Except this is the point where you have Legion begin to slowly remember who he is, but also his powers begin to activate in this point in time as well. Because when you have Magneto walk into the room, you have Legion realize that he feels a lot of anger and madness from Magneto. And so you then have Legion being able to access the mind of Magneto. And when he does that, he begins to project all these different images of Magneto's past, all the worst moments in his past, everything Magneto went to. And so, of course, he gets very upset. He's all like, who are you? What are you? And why in the world would you do that to me? And you have Magneto just run away. But you have John Doe, Legion, call out for help because he still does not technically know who he is. But at the same time, though, this is the starting point of him beginning to remember who he is. But that kind of leads into Magneto freaking out. And so with him freaking out, he just runs away. And his main goal is to find Charles Xavier and also Gabrielle to inform Charles that there's somebody else out there who is a mutant right now and currently at their clinic. But with that being said, while you have Magneto trying his best to find Charles, you have Charles walk by Psylocke just on accident. Except when they walk by one another, you have Charles realize that there is another mutant out there who's just like him, being a psychic. But you also Psylocke realize that there's something special about that man that she had just passed by. But either way, you do have Magneto find Charles and Gabrielle, but to tell Charles like, hey, listen, I think John Doe is just like us, a mutant. And so you have Charles and Magneto rush over to the clinic. And when they do, they find Legion. The problem is right now, his powers are still going crazy, where he's now projecting different things from his time. And so you have Charles and Magneto wondering what in the world is going on with this character. But now we have to jump over to the present day, and we pick up with Charles Xavier. And this is Charles calling in the big guns. And the big guns are really more Cable and Domino, really more Cable. And the reason why, because with Cable, he came from the future. And so is Charles Xavier kind of hoping in the possibility that Cable can go back in time to help the X-Men to stop Legion. But the problem is right now, all the gear that Cable needs is at the bottom of the ocean. And so unfortunately, he does not have the ability to go back in time. Now, with all that being said, you then had this funny moment happen where, you see, we forget that Cable is technically wanted in a lot of countries. And of course, that would be Israel as well. Domino too. And so for Israel, they're like, hey, that guy right there is wanted in our country. Let's go ahead and try to arrest him. Now, here's the thing. It's not really Cable they're after. They're really after Strife, his clone. But either way, you didn't have our heroes then be confronted by another projection, but this time it's from the Shi'ar Empire. And this is a message from Lilandra. And really it's her saying like, hey, Charles, my love, gotta tell you some bad news. The universe is ending because what your son is doing in the past. Now for Charles Xavier, he's very confused. He's all like, one, how do you know that it's my son is kind of causing the end of the universe? But also, what is he doing in the past that could actually lead to the end of the universe? Now, she does not tell Charles what Legion does in the past that changes everything, but it's her saying like, no, your son is the reason why the universe is ending. And of course, bringing in a brand new one. And the reason why she knows all of this is because she is with a bunch of different watchers from our reality and others as well, who have, of course, been watching over all realities. And apparently they realize that this one is about to change thanks to Charles Xavier's son, Legion. But now we have to jump into the next chapter, which takes place in Uncanny X-Men issue number 321. Now, with this chapter, we pick up with Charles Xavier and Magneto. Now, it's the two characters currently hanging out at a bar. But while doing that, you have the two characters begin to talk about the whole idea of Charles Xavier's dream, hoping that mutants and humans can live together. But for Magneto, it kind of shows here that he already has some doubts when it came to the human race, which honestly, he has the right to have those kind of doubts because of what happened in his past. Like, for example, losing his first child. Now, with all that being said, while you have the two characters talk to one another, you then have both our heroes realize that there is a man who's a veteran being picked on by other people at the bar. So the next few pages are really more just Charles Xavier and Magneto going out of their way to help protect that guy. But now we have to jump back over to the present day. And when we do, we pick up with the X-Men currently working with the Shi'ar Empire to create a device that will allow them to send somebody back in time in their astral form to kind of warn the X-Men who are trapped in the past of what Legion is trying to achieve. Now, while you have the X-Men trying to create this device, you do have the different members of the X-Men kind of realize that they are most likely at the very end of their lives. And here's the thing, it hits them all in different types of ways. Like, for example, Cyclops and Jean Grey, they just got married, but now you are talking about the possibility of their entire marriage, the entire work to build up that love for one another just ending in a matter of seconds. Rogue and Gambit, they have been battling the whole idea of if they should be a couple or not. And now there's no point of even trying to figure out if they should or not. Archangel, he just found love with Psylocke, and now that is also going to end. This man has been lonely for a very long time, and he finally found somebody in his corner. For what? Nothing. But getting back over to the X-Men in the past, it's now really them being very upset about the idea that they still have no idea who they are. It has now been 3 weeks. Like, yes, they know their names. Yes, they do know they have powers. Yes, they do know that Storm is their leader. But that's really it. And that right there is really a problem for them because they have no idea why she is their leader or what is their mission and how in the world they got powers. And like I said, it has now been 3 weeks. And so unfortunately, they're now becoming a tad bit impatient. They want to know everything about themselves, but also each other as well. And they were kind of hoping that Psylocke would be able to use her powers to fix their minds. But unfortunately, she has not been able to achieve that goal. Now, for a brief moment, we do jump over to Magneto and also Charles Xavier. And really, it's more of Magneto wanting to be there by Charles Xavier's side to kind of help him be able to achieve the goal that he wants to achieve. Mutants and humans being able to live together in harmony. That's his main goal right there. But why you have the two characters talking to one another? But now we have to get into a very strange moment in this comic. And guys, I really hate this so much, but we have to talk about it because, okay, you have Legion being able to remember who he is. And the thing is, he begins to pretend to be his own father, Charles Xavier. But then he goes out of his way to confront Gabrielle, who believes that she is talking to Charles Xavier. But in reality, she is not. And so you have Legion go out of his way to assault his mother. Yeah, you heard that right. I honestly have no idea why in the world we have this here in the comic, but you have Charles Xavier being able to feel that something is wrong with Gabrielle, and he realized that they need to hurry back to her. But while trying to do that, while you have Charles doing that, you then have the X-Men who are trapped in the past being confronted by Cable. And you have Cable being able to restore the minds of each member of the X-Men who are stuck in the past. And so with that happening, they now remember who they are, what is their mission, and what they have to do. And of course, it's to stop Legion. And speaking of Legion, we do see him currently right now getting ready to attack Magneto because we see that Charles and Magneto had arrived back to where Gabby was at. But unfortunately, when they do arrive, well, they get attacked by Legion. Really, more Magneto gets attacked by Legion. And so as we get into the final chapter, it's really more just us seeing Magneto fighting against Legion. But for Legion, this is an easy battle. And the reason why I'm saying that because Magneto is inexperienced when it comes to knowing how to use his powers in battle. And so for Legion, he currently has the edge over Magneto. But why you have the two characters fighting against one another, it's right now Charles trying to figure out what exactly is going on here. Now, you do have Psylocke being able to call out to Charles Xavier. And for Charles, he kind of feels like he knows them, but in reality, he doesn't. Really, when it comes to Storm, he does know her because there was a storyline where we have learned that Storm, when she was a child, she tried to steal from Charles Xavier, but she had failed all the way back then. But either way, once he does see Storm as a grown woman, he's kind of like, wait a second, how in the world are you here right now as a grown woman? But also, what exactly is happening here? But as we get back over to the present day, it's really more of Lilandra telling Charles Xavier that your X-Men failed. And as we all know, the X-Men have not failed yet, what it seems like. But here's the problem though, because different galaxies across the universe are just blinking away, which tells her to tell Charles that we have no confirmation yet that the X-Men have failed in the past, but the way the universe is dying, it does seem like yes, the X-Men had officially failed. And so we have not seen them failed yet, but they're going to fail. And so for Charles, he's like, this is the end. And once he realized that, the rest of the X-Men around him, they also realized that as well. Now, like I said at the very beginning of this video, this book right here, this storyline, it leads into the other X books as they all end at the same time, leading into Age of Apocalypse. This is a pretty huge moment for all the X books coming out in this time. But now we have to pick up with Apocalypse. Now, in one of our videos when it came to Cable, we had learned of the possibility of Apocalypse coming back to life. But again, we didn't have full confirmation yet. But here we are now getting that confirmation. And for Apocalypse, he realized what's happening in the past. But apparently when it came to Mr. Sinister, he knew that something like this would happen at some point in time. But either way, for Apocalypse, his main goal is to kind of use this moment to help him finally win, to achieve what he's been trying to achieve for this world. And so now we have to jump back to the past. And when we do, it's really more of the X-Men trying their best to help out Magneto fight against Legion. Now, when it comes to Legion, he does tell Magneto, like, yes, at this point in time, you are best friends with my father, Charles Xavier, but I seen your future. I seen the man you become down the road, and I know that it's your fault, the reason why my father was not able to achieve his goals. And with my father not being able to achieve his goals, mutants and humans have not really been able to kind of live together in harmony. But if I'm able to get rid of you, then most likely my father should be able to achieve his goal and bring in a better world for mutants and humans. And it's kind of like, hey, that's a huge big if there to take, Legion, but he is ready to take that big if and go ahead and kill off Magneto. But the problem is, at the very last second, you have Charles Xavier get in the way. And so instead of Magneto dying, you have Legion dying. Sorry, you have Charles Xavier dying. I have no idea why I just said Legion dying, but you have Charles Xavier dying. And when he does die, just like that, the entire universe the X-Men universe is going to change thanks to this one particular moment. And so you have Legion, and most of the X-Men, they get pulled back into most likely the present day or into a brand new world. But Bishop, he doesn't. And let's not forget that this man comes from a different timeline. And so the question is right now, can Bishop be the one to bring back the original Marvel Universe? So as we jump back to the present day, but to close on today's video, it's really more of us seeing all the different members of the X-Men in the present day, kind of realizing that, yeah, this is the end. And matter of fact, they all turn into crystals. And so, bam, there goes the end of the main Marvel Universe to bring in the Age of Apocalypse. But we're not technically there just yet. With that being said, guys, please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, see y'all next time. Later.